Good evening. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Would everyone please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I do want to take a moment to express our shock and heartfelt condolences to the community of Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida. Let's all take a moment of silence and project our prayers and thoughts to their community. Thank you very much. Okay. I have no announcements, comments. We don't do all that stuff with this budget stuff anyway, right? Yeah. Okay, public hearing, proposed municipal 2018-19 operating budget and warrant articles. And thank you, everyone, department heads, for being here this evening. And Eileen and Paul, you have a presentation. It has to do with the final, up to this point, budget.
I almost did a Paul McCallie and slid off my chair. But anyway, not
Then
that
you-
that will...
Then you'll be on video for the rest of your life,
Yes,
too.
exactly.
Good company.
Yeah, so this is what you what you generally see. This is where we're at after the changes that have been made that you did. You've made changes to revenues, you've made changes
Could you talk into the microphone a little bit more?
Yeah. Did you hear any of it?
Yes.
Okay, I'll start all
Go
over
ahead.
again. Okay, this is a summary that you normally see. It breaks down the various components of the general fund budget and then kind of separates out the self-supporting funds, which have exactly matching revenue, and state and federal grants, and self-supporting capital reserve fund withdrawals, because those monies come in exactly the same amount. So we try and compare apples to apples. So this is a revised summary that shows the changes that you have made, which we'll come to in another slide. But this just gives you a summary of the final results and tally, I guess I'd say. So what we're looking at is our tax rate was $4.90 last year, and it's being projected at being $5.17 this year, for an increase of 27 cents. So you can see, again, the general fund operating expenses went up by 6.4%, which we'll get into in a minute. $1.381 million. Capital reserve fund deposits went down by $57,000. Other capital went up. That's primarily your HVAC system, which we're also prepared to give a presentation on, an update on tonight if you have any interest. I wasn't at the last meeting, so I'm not really sure what your level of interest is or whether you had received all the information. So the revenues, there were modifications to the revenues. We're seeing $768,000 more in revenue. So that's to our benefit. And overlay for abatements, we're seeing a decrease in overlay for abatements, which is actually in our favor, because overlay for abatements is basically an expense. So that's gone down from where it was at $412,000 down to $375,000. Veterans tax credits, just like to point this out to you again. Veterans tax credits are actually made up of different things. So when you see the presentation on veterans credits, you won't see this $655,500 because there's a number of different veterans that have other kinds of benefits. Fully disabled, partially disabled, and that kind of thing, and that makes up maybe $100,000. $40,000 is what I said. Also, at Tom T's request, we took a look at values because we wanted to get a sense of whether we see anything on the horizon that might not have been picked up in April. And as you can see, we use the same assessed value to determine the tax rate, $3.382 billion. What we found was there really wasn't a lot. So last year we picked up $75 million on the mall, for instance. Anheuser-Busch was all in April of last year. And some of the other things that have been there's a lot of things, as Tom knows, that they're on the planning board and have been approved by the planning board but haven't begun. So, we're waiting for them, but they haven't happened yet. So we know for sure that we're going to pick up only about $20 million in new value, and that's new value, not inflated value. So, and what I mean by that is, if your house is worth $250 this year and you haven't done anything to it, and it's worth $280 next year because people want to buy houses now, that isn't included in there. It used to be, when I first learned about it, it was called new money, which meant it wasn't going to be spread around differently. It meant that it was going to be actually new money that that would reduce the tax rate literally, not just spread it around. So there's $20 million approximately of new value, which I don't, 3 cents. 3 cents. So we're down to about 24 cents. Yes? Okay. So we wanted to give you, can you go back one? So obviously the big number is the increase in the general fund operating expenses, which is $1,381,000. And we wanted to go over that with you again because it sticks out like a sore thumb. So our health insurance went up $282,000, which was 8.5%. 8.6%. Short-term disability, that's $38,000, and I guess I would ask you, Paul, which I'm sorry to put you on the spot, but does this include the new benefit of short-term disability?
Yeah, most of that, though, however, is the old benefit. Like $30,000 of that is the old benefit.
Okay. All right, so if you decided you didn't want to do the additional benefit, then you could take it $8,000 out of that. We don't want you to think that it was just because of that. We want to make sure that you understand it's a enhanced benefit. Workers' compensation went up $44,000. We have had extensive conversations with, that's based on our own claims. We've had extensive conversations with workers' comp recently about our claims. The joint loss management team meets with them. I believe it's monthly, Peter? Joint loss management is monthly?
Oh, the joint loss?
Yeah. Yeah.
3 months off during the year.
9 out of 12 months.
Once a month. They meet. So, and they go over all the claims, the workers' comp claims, and also the property and liability claims, car accidents, or fender benders, or those kinds of things. And so, what we talked about was some of the ways that we could. It's always discussed, but a lot of this, as they said to us, was just bad luck. It wasn't, it was just a lot of things that happened in one particular year. So, a back claim can cost a fortune. A person can be out for a really long time. Somebody tears their rotator cuff, for instance, by lifting a patient that's too heavy for them, can have somebody out for 6 months. And those kinds of things. So our claims are very high. So a $44,000 increase is actually fair compared to what our claims were this past year. The other thing was they told us, and they met with all the department. They met with Paul and I separately, and Sharon, and then they met with all the department heads about what are the things that we can do to, mitigate some of these accidents and things. And some of them are modifications to pieces of equipment that were, wearing and tearing on people, and nobody really said. So for instance, the Vactor machine that we have that sucks up stuff out of the sewer drains. Sometimes, often, there are different things in there that cause it to clog up, and so when it clogs up, it jars whoever is using it on their arms and shoulders. And I'm just giving you an example. And so we've modified that piece of equipment. We're looking at modifying the piece of equipment, or we are going to contract that part out, not the whole job, but just that part. Because if you can't modify the piece of equipment, and the employees were basically trying to be good about it, they knew that it was a difficult job, and they would just switch off when they felt that it was too much for them. So sometimes you find out afterwards when something happens rather than before. So I digress. But anyway, we're working very hard on doing that. I'd also like to point out to you that because of our claims that we have had over a certain cycle, as I had spoken to you about, most of these things are done on an actuarial basis over 3 or 4 years. A lot of the catastrophic type of claims go into a different pool, as Bill knows. And that pool is absorbed by all the municipalities that belong. So, we're still in a good position in terms of our in terms of our modification rate. So you never want to be above 100%, and we're at 68%. So it's not great. It used to be great, but we're focusing hard on it. General insurance has gone up $9,000. Debt service has gone up $17,000, and the debt service is actually kind of a strange bond that I've never seen before, where the interest actually increases as time goes on rather than decreases. So that's why. Do you have a question? Oh, okay. I'm sorry. So legal, there's $25,000 more in there for the attorney to help with negotiating contracts. Again, if you want to cut that back, I can do it. It's It's hard, but I could do it. I asked you not to take it all away. Voting booths, $19,000, and that's been modified. That's as modified by you, by reducing the number of voting booths. It was, as you know, it was 70 before. The tipping fees is the same. The cost per ton per our contract went up $1 per ton, and the recycling tipping fee increased by from $25 per ton to $54 per ton. And Kyle can give you some horror stories about other communities, and a lot of the recyclable materials are actually backing up because they don't have the value they once did because there's such a glut in the market. So fortunately, we have a contract that is for 3 years, and it's going to go up a little bit each year. But this is the first year of a kind of a difference, a change in what's happening in the recycling business. Maintenance of vehicles up $50,000. That has to do with a lot of it, as I said before, a lot of it has to do with the ladder truck. Ladder truck, do you want to spend? I don't think it's $50,000 for that particular one, but maybe it's more. I don't. But a ladder truck costs approximately $1.5 million. I'm not making it up. And how often do you use it? So, is it really worth buying a new ladder truck, or is it really worth? Do you just want to keep patching up what you have? So, and they get, even buying a used one, they're not in good shape because people hang on to them forever. So maintenance of buildings and grounds, that has gone down because we did a particular project last year that we're not doing this year.
Yes, the highway garage, because we're building a new highway garage, we backed off on some of the groundwork there. And then the replacement of the units on top of the police station.
Okay. So, yeah, we did those last year, and we're not doing them this year. That's why there's a decrease there. These represent increases and decreases from last year's budget. So, we have to, in all fairness, we have to do the decreases as well. So maintenance of office equipment, that was
Small stuff
just a bunch of small stuff across the board having to do with computer purchases, licenses, and that kind of thing, catching up with our licenses. The convincer grant is gone, so the revenue's gone and the expenditure is gone. And the idea behind it is, I think I said to you, is to potentially keep it because the state is no longer going to be using it as a tool anymore. So the thought was that we could keep it and then rent it out to other communities with our officer, and they would pay enough so that it would be worth our while. Elections have gone up because there's an extra election. Paving infrastructure has gone up. That's it was $750,000 and now it's $800,000. The town hall HVAC, which is a controversial one. And would you like to have a presentation on that? A further presentation on that tonight? Not this minute in time, but I just wanted
Why
to.
don't we wait? I'll bring that up. I'll put question mark and we'll
Okay,
talk
okay.
about it at the end.
So capital reserve fund deposits went down by $57,000. That represents money that we were going to actually put in more, And you removed $100,000 from the road capital reserve fund, road infrastructure capital reserve fund, because you decided that you weren't going to do the gravel roads. Miscellaneous, it's a plug number. That's all I can say. It's just, we needed to make this thing balance, and it's $50 there and $100 there and that kind of thing. So contractual raises for the 6 unions that are in contract, which is all of them, is $413,000, and that comes directly from what the people voted on. So it doesn't add anything. It doesn't say, well, retirement will be more, or this would be more, or that would be more. It actually comes, if you looked at the warrant article, you'd see year 1, and you add all 6 of them, and that would come to that number. So compensated absences, we kind of talked about that quite a bit in length, which is setting aside money for when somebody retires. And even if a person isn't planning on retiring, we're required by our auditors to place that money, set that money aside to pay in case they do. So if they're eligible to retire, the money goes into the compensated absences fund. And we had a whole bunch of people who shall remain nameless that turned 60 this year.
Some of us not good.
Some of us who aren't any spring chicken themselves. So anyway, then there's the non-union pay increase, $111,186 approximately. And that is a proposal by me of a 3% raise for the non-union. The staffing adjustment from part-time to full-time for the tax collector, town clerk's office, $37,000. That's primarily for health insurance. And as Diane spoke very eloquently about, her office has been a revolving door of employees just because of that part-time position. And every time you hire a new person, there's significant amount of training. They're working part-time. Now they've got trained. Now they go work somewhere else full-time. Now we bring somebody else in. It takes them 3 or 4 months to train, learn every single system that there is, because it's very complicated. So, we're trying, we see the lines every day, and I'm sure you see them too. And we want to keep somebody in there that is going to stay, so that we don't have that revolving door anymore. The custodian position for buildings and grounds, $62,000. That is mostly, again, benefits. The reason for the custodial position in building and grounds is because we have, as you have noticed, our buildings have needed extra care. The police station wasn't really, there weren't enough hours to clean the sizes of buildings that we had allocated, and various things from the Parks and Rec as relates to the landscaping and that kind of thing, mowing of grass and that kind of thing. So we are proposing a custodian position in buildings and grounds that'll be shared between 3 departments, and we even sat together and we agreed on hours, so there'll be no tugging and pulling. So the person will be working, I don't remember how many hours, but they'll be working with our buildings and grounds person here at Town Hall, or for Kyle, I should say. They will be working at the police station, cleaning and doing various things over there, and they will also be working for Parks and Recreation to help with some of the things that need to be done over there. Fire department overtime has increased by $27,000. Contractual?
Yeah, it's because of the contractual raises.
Oh, because of the raises, yeah.
not the hours, which is because of the raising.
Okay, all right. And that relates to, that's everything. So if you look at I believe, so I think that if you look at the overtime and compare the years, you'll see, I can't really say this for sure, but I believe that it includes the 30% of retirement costs that go along with the overtime. 30%. 30 cents on the dollar. Crazy. Anyway, we took out reduction. We reduced the part-time hours in the fire department, and because we're no longer using part-time people anymore. And so it was pointed out to us, and it was a very legitimate question. So that's been removed by you. The new special investigation unit of 2 police officers, we went over this before, is for this upcoming year is $304,000, which includes wages and benefits for 2 new police officers and the overtime that it would take to get those officers trained and on the street. So, as I said, until they're ready to be up and going, we'll need to have some of our existing people fill in for overtime so that we maintain that level, which is what you kind of indicated, is that you don't
Right.
want people taken off of regular patrol to be focused, do one half or the other. It has to be, we have to focus in sharply on that.
Could you just help me, maybe I'm misunderstanding. So the 2 police, 304, does that include benefits for those positions? Okay, so the wages and benefits, 218, is the increase for the department?
The wages and benefits are only for the new special investigation unit. It's 2 police officers for wages and benefits for a patrol officer and a sergeant. And then for the whole year, because we're going to hire the people this year. And the overtime.
I guess I'm missing it.
Okay. Go ahead and ask.
I'm missing it.
No, go ahead and
So
ask.
304.
Oh, 218 plus 86 equals 304.
Thank you.
Okay. So
That's, I'm thinking to myself, wait a minute. Wages and benefits is 218,000. What's wrong with this picture? I understand now.
$86,000 difference.
yeah, good.
Understood. Never mind.
Yeah. So that's where that almost $7 million increase in the operating funds for the general fund comes. It's a whole bunch of stuff.
Finley?
Eileen, is it safe to assume, probably not, that most of that 86,000 will disappear next year? A good chunk of it?
Is it next year or the following year?
That's
What?
for
Will
this
the
year.
overtime go away next year?
Yeah, after this budget, the following.
Yes, the
year's
answer is
budget.
yes.
Yeah.
It will go away.
Thank you.
Okay, before we move on, does anybody want to talk about the HVAC town hall?
If she has more information,
We have a PowerPoint if you would
Is
like.
it separate from what
Yes.
we've already heard?
Yes.
Okay. Why don't we finish the total budget thing, and we'll do it then?
Yeah.
How's that?
Mhm.
Because then if we want to do some changes, we can do it before we actually finish this.
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
So the revenue, obviously, revenue, non-property tax revenue has a lot to do with where the tax rate is, because you have you have an expenditure budget, and then you subtract out money that you get from other sources. So I believe last year was, we brought in $4.9 million in motor vehicle permit fees, and we raised it up to $5.2 million. So that's an increase of $300,000. Did I get that right? Okay. So, again, you know, it keeps surprising me. It continues to not only stay stable, but it's increasing. So we're trying to make sure that we're being a bit conservative, but not as conservative as we've been in the past. Thank you, Tom. Kay. So the cable franchise fees, you decided to, because they have such a big surplus, that we normally take $200,000 from that surplus, and not from the surplus, but from the basically the operating budget, because we bring in close to $500,000, $450,000, something like that, in cable franchise fees every year, but it's not spent. So when it's not spent, then it just accumulates, and we've reached a point where we're in the $600,000 range, just sitting there and not spending it all every year. So instead of doing $200,000 in the general fund, we're putting in $250,000 to reduce taxes. Ambulance revenue, we have a lot of activity, and so we're bringing in a lot. We're bringing in more revenue for ambulance fees. So interest, that's interest on money that we basically our excess cash, which is mostly our unreserved fund balance. And as you know, expenditures and revenues don't come in and go out at the same time. They come in at a big chunk, and then they go out in fairly even amounts. So there's money there to make interest on, and we have. That's one of the reasons why it's good to have a decent sized fund balance, because you have, and you always have, every year you have a revenue source to reduce taxes as well as the money that's there. So sale of property, we put that at $72,000, and the reason why is because over the years we've put in a number of maybe $5,000 or $3,000 or something like that, and that's not been the case. We have we've sold property, a lot of I don't want to say tax sales. We've had properties that people come in at the last minute and have to pay for their house at the very last minute and have to pay for their house, and there's an enormous amount of interest that comes in. So this isn't selling somebody's house. It's them or the bank deciding to pay it off before the house gets taken. So we just wanted to, we don't have anything in mind in particular, but it's just that's been the trend is lately over the past 5 years or so. And again, as I said, with the Convincer grant, the revenue goes away, the expense goes away, vice versa.
I just want to understand, so if a property's tax deeded, them coming and paying it off before we sell it, that becomes a sale of property?
Yes.
Thanks. Thank you. Sorry.
No, please.
Okay, so capital reserve fund purchases, we just wanted to go over those again. In the fire department, the South Fire Station space needs assessment, $25,000. There's also another $25,000 somewhere in the general fund, in general government, that would be for those space needs. So it would be about a $50,000 space needs study. It was sounds like a lot of money, but it was something that we did at the Public Works Garage that was really, that was a very, very productive process. And it gave us a basis with which to move forward on to the next step. And this is for the, and it's not an assessment, by the way. Sorry, Paul. That is a word, Bob. The south, so it isn't just the South Fire Station. If you combine the 25 here and the 25 that's in general government, it's for a space needs assessment for a public safety building, which includes police and fire.
That's what we basically spent on.
If I
You have
may.
a question,
So,
I
will
saw
there
the
be-
question mark over your head.
I know it. So is this for the safety complex? This is going to be actually coming up with basic plans for what it would be like, or because we
Not
kind of
s-
know what we need for space. I mean, so
Yeah, fairly generic, but they'll be doing, as I recall, the last time we went through it, they interviewed each of the various people in the departments, like at the maintenance garage and various office buildings and that kind of thing. Went around and looked at what would be reasonable for sizes and of rooms and spaces, and came up with what the needs might be, and into the future. What surprised me, and I'll let Kyle answer this because he can answer it better than me. But I just, as a note, I just wanted to say to you that what surprised me about the Public Works facility was that the employees were super conservative about what size they needed for what they needed, because they were so used to being cramped into a certain space. They were glad for a couple of feet, So, it was a different kind of exercise than I thought it would be. So, if that doesn't answer your question, Finley,
Actually,
I'll ask
just a little
Kyle.
torn on doing it now. If it were something, because I don't know, in my own mind, I'm thinking we kind of know what our space needs situation is. Sorry, if we were getting deeper into potentially putting out a warrant article and all, I don't know. I'm just not sure.
This is similar, the plan that we're working on with the highway garage right now, Finley, was basically done during the space needs study. That gave us the general layout of how the garage is going to be laid out and what was needed to go in, and it put all the pieces together so that it fit in the most economical form.
Sure.
If we're going to combine police and fire, what do you got the bays? How many bays do you need? You got the jail cells. How many jails? Things of that sort. We know that we have 6 jail cells. Do we need 6 jail cells? And it's going to give us the basic layout of the building so that we can, if the council so chooses, put it out for bond. It will give us a good idea of the basic layout and the basic cost of it.
I think was his initial question, but I think the question now really is, why do we need it to do it now? Because we're not close enough.
It's not imminent.
Yeah.
And that's probably more like it, because I know we talked about it during our goal setting and all, and I know it's something that would be nice at some point, and I hate throwing good money after bad in projects like the old South Station and everything, but that's why I'm just in my mind, I'm kind of racking around a little bit.
Bill, you had a
We're
question?
not doing that unless you approve it. But I would never bring something like that to you. I don't mean the old fire station. I meant the Reed's Ferry one, because I know that was discussed recently.
Okay, yeah, and I'm just, the repairs, I'm thinking
Oh,
real
oh.
heavily about South End and all,
Yeah.
too, but
Mhm.
Bill,
See,
did you
I-
add something?
I agree where Finley's going with this. I mean, we've been talking about South Fire, and it's not ADA compliant, there's no separate women's quarters, there's no separate men's quarters. The actual site of itself is small to begin with, it's tough to expand. I'm having a hard time swallowing 25 grand for a space assessment down at South Fire when I think, I shouldn't say this with my colleagues in front of me who are entitled to their own opinion, but I think we're all in the same boat that we would like to see something more comprehensive as it relates to the fire department. Whether or not the South Station fits in that picture or not is a totally different question. So to use Finley's line of throwing good money after bad or vice versa, I tend to agree with them. I'm having a hard time accepting this.
Eileen?
To Bill's question or remarks, this really it shouldn't say South Fire Station space needs assessment. It really is. It relates to replacing the South Fire Station somewhere else. It's not we're going to take the South Fire Station and we're going to try and do some needs assessment so that we can make that location work. I think the decision has already been made for all intents and purposes that it's going to be somewhere else. So if I don't know if I got if I misunderstood you, Bill.
No, I'm thinking South Fire Station. Now you're telling me it's something different, something different altogether. I personally just find
concur, I'm
that I find that
confused.
frustrating.
I concur, I'm confused.
Okay.
Maybe I'm just confused
All right.
this evening.
So what it is
But I mean,
is
Go ahead.
this is about a space needs study for a public safety building,
okay,
police
so it's
and
not,
fire.
so it's mislabeled.
It's sort of mislabeled, but what we've always called it the South Fire Station, but it's really a replacement of the South Fire Station, and it hasn't been combined with the other $25,000 that we have somewhere else that relates to the police one. They really should have been combined together, except there isn't a police capital reserve fund. So there's 25 and 25 in different parts of the budget. This is the 25 that can be taken out of capital reserve. The other 25 is in general government because there's not another one. So it would be $50,000 for a space needs study for a new public safety building.
Okay,
for
the
police
grand
and
one that
fire.
we've. Tom?
So just a question, how much did we spend for the space needs study for the highway department?
DPW.
Where's Kyle at? Kyle? Remember?
And then we have the other 50 on top of it.
So, I
Don't
mean,
mumble.
so
We
if
had
it
the other
is,
50 for Turner to come in to help us put the
Yeah.
plans together and make everything thing.
I
It was like,
agree with you, Paul. I thought it was more along the lines of 80.
it was around 60,000, I think, all said and done.
Yeah, assessment. So
Does that answer?
So is that clearer? I mean, it doesn't, I'm not trying to convince you one way or another. I just wanted to make sure that you
So
understood.
that grand dream that we had about the combined, you're thinking is the South Fire
What-
Station?
No. What I'm saying is,
Replacement for it.
a replacement somewhere else for the South Fire Station that we've always been talking about since before I've been here, is to not use the existing South Fire
Correct.
Station, but to relocate it. Since then, we've had our retreats and stuff and talked about a public safety complex that includes
That's what I'm talking about.
Yes, so they would both be included in a
Correct.
different
Okay,
location.
so I am, okay.
So it's incorporating the use of the South Fire Station and the police station.
Okay. You all set, Pete?
Yeah, it sort of makes sense, I guess, in some ways, and I guess I'm thrown off by the label of it too, but that if you find out that you're gonna put together a public safety center and it's gonna be more towards the area of the existing South Fire, then why do South Fire, right? So I guess it all kind of plays together, so I get it, I get
Some
where it's
placement, yeah. All set? Okay, go ahead.
And really, not that it matters, but I just wanted to point out to you that $25,000 of this is coming out of the capital reserve fund. So the only thing that, if you decided not to do it, we would only be removing $25,000 out of the budget,
Right.
essentially, because that's a revenue and
Because it's already
expense.
capital reserve.
So, but you know, as I said, I'm not trying to convince you because
Just
of
to
that.
clarify.
Then we have some breathing air cascade replacement, fire apparatus computer replacement, fire command SUV, and we kind of went through that, as well as the car for the, kind of like a pool car for town hall that would be primarily used by community development, but that's in a different part of the budget. The fire suppression hose, large diameter supply hose. We need to replace hoses every year. Portable radio replacement, $298,000. As you know, we are looking at applying for a grant. The chief and Assistant Chief Borneman were very instrumental, and probably Assistant Chief Pearson also, were very instrumental in getting us a grant on some SCBA equipment, breathing equipment, last year that was going to cost us a fortune. So he's going to be applying for that as well this year. And if we don't need to do that, it won't be removed from the capital reserve fund if you fund it, or you decide not to take it out of there for that.
Pete, you had a question? You're all set?
Town manager answered.
Okay.
So, $200,000 for drainage improvement. We do that every year. And we try and do them in conjunction with the roads that are being done, so that you don't tear the roads up a couple of times. So the Severance Bridge canoe launch is in there. You can explain that? Yes.
That's moving the canoe launch.
Right.
That's on Severance Bridge Road in conjunction with the Conservation Commission parcel. So they're going to make a new area for a canoe launch and parking area and things of that sort on the conservation side, which is better for us because of that, where they are, where Severance Bridge and Amherst Road, that's a very dangerous intersection, and having cars into that intersection or into Severance Bridge Road. So they decided to look at the Severance Bridge canoe launch.
Pete?
Hey, Paul, just a question on that. So we're going to move it to the boat launch to a conservation?
Kyle has more information on that, I believe, or Dawn.
Isn't that the one where the council approved the purchase of a piece of waterfront land recently for the conservation? Oh, no.
It's in a different part of town. Dawn actually.
Okay, John's coming.
It's on the other side of the road. We talked about this.
Yeah, we talked about this.
Dawn is rising. I couldn't help it, I'm sorry. Won't be the first or last time.
The early worm. The early rising catches the worm. Is it on? It's on.
I think it's on.
Yep. The proposal is to move the boat ramp from the intersection of Amherst Road and Severance Bridge Road, which is very steep and it's been eroding away, across the street on some conservation land that was received from Ireland, Mr. Ireland, his family. Right now, we're in the process of getting a topographic and boundary survey to find out exactly what we can do with the property. And that's where we're at. We're talking with conservation. I've gotten some estimates for doing the field work for that.
Yeah, and so this leads me to my question, I guess, is that the Conservation Committee, they have a significant budget. And this is an improvement in this piece of property, and can could we look at not using that budget for this work?
Yes.
Good catch.
We're actually working in conjunction with,
I mean, that
Yes.
they've got a, and
You
I
can't
see every
make
year that
them.
they've got a significant
No,
amount of money.
We could encourage.
You can't make them, is
We
what my
can't make
point
them,
is.
okay?
We could
Can we
encourage.
at least approach them on
Request.
it?
this is what we've come to. This is an agreement because it's going to cost a lot more money than this to be able to do this. Right,
Ah,
exactly.
Thank you.
Thank you, Don.
still a good point, Counselor.
Although, I will tell you that the funds are dwindling. They're dwindling.
Yes, they are.
I didn't catch that.
The funds are dwindling.
Well, they
A lot of
use them.
property has been purchased over the past 2 or 3 years, which is a real feather in their cap. But once the money's gone, it's pretty much going to be gone because there's no more very little property left
Right.
in current use.
Right.
That's where the money comes from, is the current use tax. When somebody takes property out of current use and develops it, they pay a lot less, maybe 10 cents on the dollar if it's in current use, which means they're not going to develop it. So that money, so when they develop it, the money from taking it out of current use, there's a fee to take it out of current use. That money, I believe it's up to $1 million, goes into the conservation fund, and anything above $1 million comes into the general fund. But my point really is,
It's 50/50.
That's what I thought.
After-
oh, 50/50. So, but anyway, when the money is gone, it's not going to keep flowing because there's only so much property in current use, and we've done some projections on it, and there's not a lot of money that could come our way in the future. So,
And they need that money to maintain trails and all that.
right.
Yeah.
Do you have any sense of how much is left now? It's
Still a
less than
significant amount.
I
500,000.
thought it was close to $1 million.
No.
It's right around between $500,000 and $600,000.
Oh, it's real low then.
Yeah.
It is low. Wow. Jackie?
Yep, there have been a couple of purchases, notably the Merrimack River
That's
parcel next to the towns. I just wanted to say something about the canoe port. It's still really in the planning stages because neither the parking area, the new one, or the launch itself has been set particularly, and even though there's a private individual was that Mr. Ireland, who isn't going to sell the area, but has offered to host the launch. I just wanted to say that it's possible that people will have to carry their kayaks or canoes in. It's possible that the roadway might turn out to be expensive or unwieldy. That's all.
And is that what they do now, Jackie?
Well, that doesn't
With the
exist yet.
No, but with the one that's
I think
it's
that
being
the
replaced
parking area both at by the cemetery, by the Meeting House Cemetery, and the one over at Seventh Bridge, which I'm not as familiar with, I think they're both very close.
It's right there on the riverbank.
It's right there. It's right there. You can park and carry, but this one might be a little bit
Yeah, steep.
farther.
Yeah, it's a very steep embankment. And not far, but it's steep and awkward.
Then we have a couple of dump trucks. We always get pickup trucks and dump trucks every year. That's why we save for them, so that we can pay cash for them. They need to be replaced on a regular basis. As you know, it is anticipated, now that you have made the decision to to use the existing Public Works facility, basically what do they call that? The, what's it called? The envelope, the building envelope. You're going to gut the existing public works facility envelope and store your equipment inside, which will do a lot of things, including add to the life of these vehicles. So we'll see less of these dump trucks being replaced on in the future. An athletic field groomer, a trailer for the solid waste because as you know we pay for a tipping fee for disposing of our trash, but we transport it. So that's one of the trucks that we have to carry the trash. And then the truck cab.
Yeah, the tractor. We're replacing one of the very used Peterbilt that we bought when we first took over the solid waste facility, and we're replacing one of the trailers that are there to haul. So it's between a cab of a tractor and a trailer.
So the sewer fund, as you know, doesn't affect the tax rate, but it's also very important for you to know those, scrutinize those items too. Manhole, sewer line rehab, $25,000. A front end loader replacement, $200,000. Replacement of OEM. What is that? Jim Taylor.
That's equipment manufacturer.
What is?
Original equipment.
Oh.
Manufacturer.
I thought that was a brand. Replacement of one sludge pump, $25,000. For a total of 1.752311. 1.752 million. And of that, 1.54 million is coming from the general fund, which affects which has to do with the tax rate. Again, there's the exact amount coming in of revenue. The sewer infrastructure ones are offset by in the sewer fund. Sewer user fees. So now capital reserve, we just talked about capital reserve withdrawals. As I was saying, the capital reserve fund withdrawals, as you know, come in, they're coming in from a savings account that you've already saved for. So they don't essentially affect the budget because there's an exact amount of money coming in from the savings account to pay for it, to pay for it in cash. But capital reserve fund deposits are what goes into those savings accounts. And those do literally affect the tax rate. There's an ambulance that we're looking to purchase, communications equipment at
That's the dispatch.
police dispatch, computer equipment. There's always, there's always computers that need to be replaced and repaired, and licenses to be purchased. Daniel Webster Highway, we always put in $50,000 every year, and every 5 years we do half of what's in. Is that right?
We try to pay.
Half and half of the DW highway that's within the town's urban compact. Do you know what that is? I know you guys do, but do you know what an urban compact is? Do you want me to? Do you want me to explain what an urban compact
go ahead.
is? Okay. The urban compact is basically the part of DW Highway that has been designated as the responsibility of the town. So if you're driving north to and get to Greeley Street on DW Highway, you'll see a sign on your right that says the start or the end of the urban compact. And when you get to about Walmart, which is exit Walgreens, which is about Wall, yeah. My heart was in the right place. When you get up to there, that's the end of the urban compact. And the reason why that is because it's actually a state road. And so outside of that, they have jurisdictions on various things. That's why the Flatley property had to get certain permits for them. And once something's outside the urban compact, they have to decide on whether there'll be new curb cuts or those kinds of things. And they have to plow them and repair them. And they only usually do it in big towns and cities. Most of the small towns don't have an urban compact. It's all paid for by the state. So we set aside $50,000 every year just to make sure that we're ready to overlay that on a regular basis, that very particular road. Fire equipment, $250,000 is being put in there. That's actually a number that we use most years, and last year we reduced it because we bought an ambulance instead. So highway equipment up by $75,000, which is going to be put into the Highway Equipment Capital Reserve Fund, and that is primarily because the cost of vehicles are going up, and we really haven't been keeping up with them. So in the fund is depleting and depleting, which takes away its real value. You save for something for the year, and then you spend it that year. So it doesn't make a lot of sense. So the library maintenance fund, that's an increase of $40,000, which I believe Yvette spoke to you about. Paul knows. There's a sidewalk, just paving the
slate roof, sidewalks, elevator, sprinkler
Window
systems,
things.
HVAC.
So, and all of these things are not, that we don't just drop these numbers down from the sky. They come from a pretty technical process where we project out for approximately 6 years. We do a capital improvements plan, as you know, and we project out for about 6 years every year on what the needs are going to be, and that's what these estimates come from. So the Capital Improvements Fund comes before the CIP, Capital Improvements Fund comes before you, and then it goes before the Planning Board by law, and then it gets placed into the budget. And then $10,000 for milfoil, which we do every year. Okay, so deliberative session, March 14th. 2018 at 7 p.m. at the James Mastrocola Upper Elementary School, all-purpose room, and annual voting day, Tuesday, April 10th, 2018, from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. at the James Mastrocola Upper Elementary School, all-purpose room, room 26. Room 26, all-purpose room, 26 Babuzik Lake Road, this is for me, St. John Newman Church at 708 Milford Road, and Merrimack Middle School, 31 Madeline Bennett Lane.
Excellent.
Anything else?
At some point in the future, we will have a discussion about which town councilors are going to be at which site for voting day. We'll do that in the future.
This is a public hearing, right?
Well, first I want to do, what I'd like to do is, do we want to listen to that HVAC thing? Because that may alter some proposals for changes in the budget. Right? So-
Just one other thing that I wanted to say to you about the HVAC. As you know, we have talked about applying for an energy grant from the utilities companies. Kyle has brought somebody in, and he's done the evaluation, and we'll have that information on the 20th of this month. So, right?
No, they're coming in on the 20th. We won't have it. We won't have it for a couple weeks after that. They're coming in on the 20th.
What? Okay. When are we going to get it in?
They're coming in to do their envelope study, as they call it, on the 20th, and then a couple weeks after that, we should have a
Take
report
a
in
couple
from
of
them.
weeks for results.
Yeah. Yeah.
But anyway, we're looking for money.
Okay, so why don't we talk about the HVAC? And after that, we'll open up for public.
All right. Good evening, councilors. We're going to do a brief recap of the presentation we did last week and add a little bit of information. Much of it is a repeat, but as was mentioned to us last week, having a presentation, particularly for the folks at home, to help better understand it is something we should have done anyway. So we put this together for that purpose. So the Town Hall East building is the building we're talking about for the HVAC study, and in particular the first floor. On the first floor, which is where the town manager's office, the assessing office, and the town clerk tax collector offices are, they're heated and cooled by PTAC units, which stands for Package Terminal Air Conditioning Units. The picture of one is right there. They're similar to what you would see in a hotel. The units are generally very loud. They're not energy efficient, and they have a pretty short lifespan. They don't provide ventilated air to the workspace. And last year, two of our 17 units actually caught on fire, and the fire department had to respond to Town Hall. So in reaction to that, we hired H.L. Turner, who is the company that's designing our highway garage, to do a quick study for us to develop some concepts and budgetary numbers for replacement of the PTAC units. And they developed two options, and their basis for the options were to mimic the feel of what we have currently, as far as being able to customize the temperature controls in each of the offices, as the PTACs can do. So option one, which we'll talk about, is replacing the PTAC units in kind, and option two is to replace the PTACs with a central heating and cooling system. So option one, replacing the PTAC units with newer units of similar kind. The cost for that project would be about $140,000. The pros to that would be the much lower initial installation cost. Cons are obviously high life cycle costs, and there'll be a graph coming up soon that'll really demonstrate that. Additionally, they need to be replaced about every 10 years, although the ones we have now, some of them aren't even making 10 years. They're also much less efficient fuel-wise. They use a lot more gas than a central system would. For option two, we broke it up into two categories, 2A and 2B. So 2A was the kind of the Cadillac system that Turner put together that would give us the ultimate control, temperature control in each office, which would mimic the flexibility of the PTAC units. And what that would involve would be air handling units with variable air volume heating coils, the hot water system essentially, for the heat and the typical air compressor that you see for air conditioning through ductwork. The cost for that project was estimated at $241,000. The pros for that kind of system are lower life cycle cost, energy efficient, and it maintains the zone flexibility to the individual rooms. The cons are obviously the high initial cost, the need to construct ductwork and hot water coils, and of course it's going to take up some of the interior space that we have in Town Hall. We did discuss the contractor for Eversource that I mentioned came in early this week and did his initial walkthrough, and to Councilor Harrington's point, he said having the units in the attic would work just fine. But perhaps the negative is we would lose that space. You know, it is kind of valuable storage space, but it's a consideration.
You can't put files up there, is my understanding, because the structure's not strong enough to be able to accommodate certain weights. Is that right, Paul?
That is correct.
So, but it could accommodate some heating system.
We'd have to
Find out.
find out.
Okay.
It could definitely accommodate it. He also saw the existing systems that are in the crawl space there that's not insulated at all because it's meant to be cold space for the roof. And he suggested, you know, it wouldn't pay for itself very quickly, so it's probably something we wouldn't do. But those units would operate a lot more efficiently if they were moved into the attic space as well.
Okay.
Option 2B is kind of what we talked about last time as well. That would be air handling units with a forced hot air furnace rather than the hot water system, similar to what we have in the basement. The cost for that is $200,000, and the big difference is you would be sharing ductwork for the heating and the cooling instead of having separate heating and cooling system. The pros for that, again, that system over the PTAC system, again, is lower life cycle cost and they're energy efficient. The cons, again, are high initial cost, the need to construct the ductwork, taking up the space, and the con versus the 2A option is that we would lose some zone flexibility to the individual rooms.
Oh, sorry, Pete, go ahead.
Kyle, the space, how much space do we actually, like square footage, would we lose?
That's not determined yet because we haven't designed the actual system,
Okay,
so I can't answer that at this point.
okay, thanks.
Here's a couple of graphs that were in your packet last time, but it really illustrates the difference between the PTAC option and the central option. The one on the left, option 1, is utilizing the PTACs. And what these graphs show is the monthly energy cost for each system. The one on the right is the central systems. The important thing to note, although the graphs look similar in scale here, the graph on the left, the Y scale is to 2,000, whereas the one on the right, the Y scale is only to 800. So, for example, the kind of bluish purple areas are your cooling electric use. They're actually about the same. So the cost to operate the PTACs in the summer are about the same as cost as operating the central system in the summer. The big difference is in the heating cost, which is more like 8 or 9 months out of the year. So
I think the message is don't show this graph again this way. Make them to the same scale. I mean, it's very confusing at that rate.
Understood. Thank you. This one's a little more clear. It's kind of a side-by-side. The graph on the left shows the total system life cycle cost. And you'll notice option 1, the yellow is the initial construction cost. For the central system, which is the one on the right, the yellow is quite a bit bigger, mostly because we would need to install the ductwork. The system one, which is the PTAX, you just pull the old ones out, put the new ones in, and you're done. But where the savings are, you'll see the purple part of the left-hand bar. That's the 10-year replacement of those units because they don't last as long as the central system. And then the blue part of it is maintenance. The PTAX are certainly a lot more maintenance, primarily just because there's 17 of them versus 3 or 4 central units. And then the other big fish is the red bars are the energy use for each of the two systems. And then comparing option 1 versus 2, the graph on the right, they analyzed it and determined that it's about an 8-year payback for the central system versus the PTAC replacement. So what are the next steps? So as Paul mentioned, next Tuesday, Eversource is paying a contractor to do a building envelope study, an energy assessment study on the building. So they're coming Tuesday to do a couple of tests. They're going to bring an infrared thermal tool to look for heat loss areas, and they're also going to do a vacuum test where they're going to suck all the air out of the building and see where drafts are and see where we could do improvements. Earlier this week, as I mentioned, the HVAC guy did come in, looked at the system. We gave him scale drawings of the building and window locations and all of that. So he's already started on the HVAC side of it. And Tuesday is kind of the step above that Eversource agreed to pay for to look at our overall energy savings possibilities in the building. So that's next Tuesday. And I don't have a date for the report, but I would hope that it's probably a couple weeks away from that.
Eileen?
This is a grant? Would they offer us a grant or a loan or something? What is the advantage of, I know that they're paying for the study, all the infrareds and the blowing in and blowing out stuff, but are they actually going to give us some cash?
They may. That's part of what their determination will be. So a little part of all of our electric bills goes to a fund that funds these kind of energy audit projects. So essentially, we've already paid for it, and we're just getting some return on our investment that Eversource has hired this contractor. And then once they get through the process, the contractor is going to recommend a system for us. They're going to take into account what Turner did, look at that system. He suggested that was a good system. He has another one in mind he'd like to price out and kind of look at the energy use. They really look at everything
Efficiency.
from the energy side of it because that's their mission. That's the reason they have this.
Reimbursement programs and stuff like that, I know.
That's the reason they have this pot of money is they're charged with, even though Eversource is getting out of the distribution game, they're still charged with lowering the use.
Okay.
So, and then the final step would be we would plan on coming back to the council with whatever recommendations we receive from the contractor and open it up for discussion as to what system you guys would like to go with.
Questions from the council? Go right ahead, Tom.
So we really don't know what this thing's going to cost us at the end of the day.
Well, it's safe to say the upper limit is that 241.
Right, but I mean, I know.
But you're correct. We don't.
Right, but so I'm going to throw this out here. So I don't want to increase our tax rate for something we're not, for the unsurety of, we don't know what it is. I mean, I would suggest just use the unreserved fund balance, and if it comes in at 100, it comes at 100. I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there, but I don't think we should be jacking the tax rate up because of an uncertainty when we still have this slide up, stating that on the 20th, and then there's going to be recommendations of what if the guy comes and recommends the PTAC units?
Doesn't matter.
Well, it's going to be less expensive. But it's not going to be a burden to the taxpayers either, is what I'm saying. And then also, I mean, we have 17 units, but not all 17 are broken. And by the way, I keep hearing the 2 caught on fire. That's great, but we do have sprinkler systems in these rooms, so I'm sure it would have been a confined area if something would have happened. So I'm just, I'm just having a tough time swallowing this, $250,000 with HVAC. So,
Eileen?
just wanted to ask Paul, from a procedural point of view, does the council have another shot at the apple on some other date once we get the further information? So let's say the council decided that they wanted to do option 2B, which is the $200,000 one, and we were getting a grant for $50,000, so that it would end up being $150,000. These are just round numbers. Does the council have another shot at making those changes before it goes to the public?
The council has one last, excuse me, the council has one last shot, and that would be at the deliberative session. Would be the next time that they could make a change to the budget.
So they couldn't have another meeting, procedurally, they couldn't have another meeting after tonight?
After tonight, they can't have a meeting to change what is going forward on the warrant.
On the warrant.
The warrant goes to deliberative session. At deliberative session, they can make a change to the bottom line of the number, the $34 million. They can reduce that or add money to that at the deliberative session if they so choose.
Okay.
But they can't, tonight is the night,
Okay.
is the final night. We will not have enough information for them to have another meeting in time to meet all the requirements
But
associated with it.
for the deliberative session, they will have enough. We will have the information, correct, Kyle?
We're hoping,
I hope so, but I can't speak to how quick the contractor in Eversource is
When-
going to do their work.
So,
They've been terrific. They squeezed us in to come in on the 20th because I'm leaving for vacation the next day, and so she did a really great job and offered to come in early. She's booked out weeks, and so she's really making a good accommodation. So I have every belief that they're going to turn this around quickly.
and we will ask them to help us out on this matter, to turn it around as quick as possible, and give them what our deadline dates are
okay,
for that.
all right.
I'd like to correct one thing. After tonight, like I said, the next shot at this is at deliberative session. After that, the only time that you would have to be able to do a project like this is if at the end of the fiscal year, there might be some savings, and the council chooses to use those savings to do
For
the
that
project. Yet, you don't have another bite at using fund balance on this project until, if it goes tonight, the council votes to get rid of this project and wait and see, the only other time you could do it is at the end of the fiscal year if there is appropriation savings.
And that is when?
June 30th,
Right.
right. But the other things, there's a lot of things that go on.
And there's no guarantees.
And there's no
that there'll be
guarantees
any.
that there's going to be money there for that.
Correct.
I would say that there often is. I couldn't say that it would be this amount of money because we have already committed to the police $85,000, I think it is, in overtime to, to make sure that the special investigation unit is
And hiring the new employees
and
as of
hiring the
April
new
1st.
employees as of April 1st, which doesn't seem to be panning out, as I've spoken to each of you about. We will keep our eye on it very closely. We, as you know, at the end of every year, when, as we get closer to the end of it, we can get a better sense as to what we might have left over for, because it's really not necessary to at this point, to keep dropping money into fund balance every year. So, it's not, and I don't want to imply that we're looking for things to do so that because we have extra money, we're taking projects that were planned on being done and spending it with money that we have the prior year rather than the following year.
Finley, you had a question?
Yes, thanks, Nance. Go back here. I hate those things. So, on the option 2B and 2A, one of the losses going to 2B is that you lose that controllability for individual room temperatures. So, thinking the town clerk, tax collector's office, there are the couple of offices, but in most instances, those doors are, I'm suspecting, likely open, so that should work there. Assessing, same thing. The third section was the town manager's office and the HR and everybody.
We would be very happy to take option 2B.
Yeah, and I just,
Yeah.
so I just wanted to be sure that that would work in those circumstances.
It was interesting. I walked around with the contractor on Monday as he did his kind of initial look, and I spoke to him about kind of my unintelligent concept of assessor's office, town clerk office,
Everything else.
town manager office. He didn't see it that way.
No.
Him being the expert. He said, first off, the meeting room should be its own zone, right off the get-go. The memorial room. He suggested the town manager's office and the HR coordinator's office, that wall being the south face of the building would be his own, because the heating needs are much different on the south face. So he kind of looked at it from that standpoint. So there'd be probably at least 4 zones. The trouble part is the town manager's conference room and the town council chambers, because they're kind of in the middle-ish of the building, and of that area of the building. And like Eileen has mentioned, when we have meetings in there's no control in that building now because there's no P-tax there, particularly her conference room. If her door's open, it gets heating and cooling. If it's not, it doesn't. So that'll be a challenging space to try to design. But that's what the consultant is really good at.
Elaine?
I just say, I'm perfectly fine with that.
Yeah.
I've lived with it for 7 years, and I'm perfectly fine with having a cold conference room and a hot office. That's what it is.
So you could go back and forth. Sorry.
And that is to say, it's still, that's 4 or 5 zones instead of 17 zones, which is what we have now.
Right. So then, on the P-tax, were they contemplating putting outside air, introduction of outside air for those?
Yeah.
Because
and
it's showing me at $8,235 per unit if we're
Right.
replacing 17 units.
Right.
That just seems like crazy
It
money
is.
also.
The units themselves cost about $3,500, the P-tax.
So $5,000 for installation?
No, that's for bringing the air ventilation system in. I remember I talked last time that
Right.
To meet current code, air ventilation needs to be brought in as well. So that's that extra cost. And again, that's one of those, because you're installing some ductwork for that. That's where your big
Okay.
cost comes into play.
All right. Then the last thing I just want to point out for conversation, 8-year payback, if that's an accurate assessment, that's all I need to know. Because if I'm replacing the other one in 10 years, thereabouts, I'm good. Thanks.
Jackie?
Yeah, I think that the necessary costs connected with just replacing those PTAC units are just particular to those particular kinds of heating things. They don't transfer into other kinds. But once we put the ductwork in, ductwork has been the same for, 50 years or so, and I would have to assume that they might be useful in 20 more years when maybe some of those have to be replaced. So that's kind of a permanent enhancement of our town hall infrastructure, it seems to me. Can we change tonight the $241,000 that we reserved for the heating and drop it to the 200?
You could do whatever you want.
Yes, that's what tonight's for.
Okay.
This is the final, and whether it be that or any other changes, the department heads are here. If we have questions related to any of our suggestions, and you're right, our final decision will be, this is the final budget after any changes we want to make.
Okay. Yeah, because I would support that.
Okay, any other comments or questions about this? Okay, ahead. I have a question. Again, it might be my brain tonight. We knew that there was going to be a decrease. We didn't know what it was going to be, but the zoning versus the not zoning, we knew there was going to be a decrease on that. if you're saying that it's potentially a good idea using the ceiling, the roof, or the third floor, however you want to put it, attic, there's probably going to be a savings there too, because there's a lot less difficulty with installation.
Yeah, absolutely. For the main trunk line, there would be no
So-
obstacles to work around,
So it will probably be less than 200,000,
probably. I think that's safe to say.
but you have no concept of
I
what.
couldn't.
And that wasn't discussed with,
That'll be in Doug's report when we get it. He is going to look at that as an option. He liked the idea, but he too mentioned that we would be giving up usable space to
Right.
do so.
okay. Any other questions for anybody? Okay, if there are going to be changes to this particular item, I would recommend you do it now.
Do you open public hearing? Doesn't it need to be
Well, we can do it two ways. We can do the changes, then open it up to the public hearing. The public hearing may have us change more, and that allows us to respond to whatever's going on in the public hearing, at which point we can make changes again if we want. That's the only advantage. I'd like to be able to make whatever changes so the public knows what the changes are going to be and they can express their opinion about it. Does that sound all right to everyone? So I would like to recommend if there's any changes to the present budget, whether it be this or anything else, we make it now before I open up the public hearing. Thank you very much, Chief.
Madam Chair, I would move based on staff's recommendation that we reduce the appropriation for the HVAC system from $241,000 down to $200,000.
Second.
Motion made by Bill Boyd, second by Tom Koenig. Is there any other discussion needed? Yes, Tom, go
So,
ahead.
I mean, listening to Kyle, he says that he thinks it can even go lower than that. So, I mean, why do we settle with the 200 with what's on the presentation? I mean, why not go 180 and split the, kind of the difference of the P-tax of 140 to the, to 180?
Finley? And then,
I think because we don't know what it's going to be at the deliberative session, that's normally a no-brainer for the people participating at the deliberative session to lower the budget even further. So if in fact the numbers come in, which I'm hoping that they do, I think we'd have a more accurate idea of what it would be. That's just me.
at that time.
Yeah.
Pete and then Bill? I'm sorry.
No,
were you done?
I'm good. No, I just was
Okay.
talking in afterward.
And to respond to Tom's comment, I get where Tom's going with it, but I think that, we've been told 200,000, and I think we're looking at taking off 41,000. And, I'd rather have the money there and find out later that we don't need some of it and it can come back, than not have it there and find out we need it. So that's my position on that.
Bill?
We have 28 days until deliberative session. Anything can happen in between now until deliberative session. If something gets agended before March 14th, something could be agended next Thursday, but I highly doubt it. If we're looking at,
We're being, go ahead.
I was going to say, we get the 22nd and then March 8th. So conceivably, Kyle could come back to us on March 8th. I think it's unrealistic on the 22nd. Let's just say March 8th. Then another presentation could be brought in. Maybe we get some more definitive numbers. And then if we get the definitive numbers, then we can make the change at the deliberative session. But based on the recommendation that's being made, and I really appreciate where Council Thornton's coming from. I do. I want to echo that. But and as much as, we've got a suppression system at Town Hall that could conceivably put out a fire, there's a cost associated with anything that happens here in town, whether it be replacing something or fire suppression, then cleaning up after the fire. So, I'm of the mindset that I really want to fix this, and I want to fix it right and have it be done so that the people that work at Town Hall and the people that come to transact at Town Hall know that our HVAC system is functioning accordingly. So that's how I'm thinking about why I made the motion. Thank you.
Jackie?
Yes, and I echo all of these comments. I completely agree. The other thing is that it's not a bad thing to have some contingency money too, to build in things that we haven't even decided. And I think this is a good compromise with the. Eileen says that it wouldn't affect them too much to go with a less a flexible system, but we will save quite a bit of money. And still have it if we save more.
Eileen?
I feel that the number will come down once we get. I think this is the outside number, and I'm thinking that either by a grant of some kind through this process, or having the new numbers from Eversource or from the contractor, we will be able to hone this number down better. And I'm expecting that it actually happen before deliberative session. So at that time, that you will have the ability to either take that new, more definitive number and modify the budget accordingly, or do as Tom said and just reduce it.
Okay, any other discussion? Ready for a vote? Okay, motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? 700. Okay, any other changes to the budget before I do open? Yes, Pete?
I'm kind of stuck since the original presentation under town government is our legal fees. Yeah, I know we're raising it. You've asked to raise it 25,000. I don't know how much was last year. Was 100,000 for legal fees. How much money did we expend of that?
Around $98,000.
98,000. All right. Yeah. I guess we're pretty close, but we didn't go over it, and I guess I'd like to stay at and make just start the discussion of staying at $100,000 again this year. And we had a pretty busy year last year, but I think that yeah, knock on wood. But that's a concern I have. So I'd like to stay at. I'd like to talk, maybe some of my other counselors can speak to that, as staying at that number of 100,000, and that's where I stand on that. And I'd like to hear from anybody else if they have a position on it.
Eileen, yes.
The reason why I added the $25,000, we generally, before I got here, we used to have a higher budget for legal. And so I ended up doing a lot of negotiating myself without having a lawyer in here. Most of the time, a lawyer is not in here doing negotiations, except to review documents and that kind of thing. And making sure the words are specific and all of that. But this year we have 5 contracts coming up, and I've done it before, but it's tough. So the reason why I asked for more money is because it takes up almost all of my time to do the negotiating. And I don't have to have all of it, but I'd like a little, please.
Yeah, I guess, and that brings me up to a question I have is, we're coming into negotiations, and I know comments have been made. I think I made a comment during this process, is going forward to spread this out so we don't have 6 unions coming up, and I think you've agreed with me, Eileen. Thank you on that. But I guess, do we go right into contract negotiations with a lawyer in the first meeting? Do we bring attorneys in? Do we come in and sit down with each of the unions and see where we're both at, to see how close we are to maybe an agreement?
We're never close at the beginning. we're never even close to being close. So we get, in all my experience with union contracts, and I don't fault them, but we get requests for 8-10% per year kind of thing sometimes, and most of we're very far away once we get to the table. So I would say that some are easier than others to come to an agreement on, but they do take a lot of time. And every once in a while, I'll have an attorney come in and at the first meeting, but I haven't lately because I've been through them here, so that I know the people, I know kind of what I've already gotten my marching orders from you as to where you want to go. So I guess the answer is no, I don't expect that an attorney will come in. The way that it usually goes is that I will come up with some recommendations for, increases and changes in language, changes in, whatever other benefits that there may be, and then we will, I will go in and negotiate. I don't want to talk about the whole thing, but anyway, it's an intensive process when you have 5 going at the same time.
And I can respect that. I guess I've been on the both sides of the table over my career. I know that in the past, we didn't always have lawyers in every meeting. Significantly, we had a few meetings prior to the lawyers getting involved if we came to loggerheads. So I guess that, I would leave that certainly up to your judgment, but maybe we should consider that going forward. And I would just, I respect that you've asked maybe don't take the whole 25,000. So I would just look at maybe let's adjust it. Then maybe move to, since we used 98,000 of 100,000, maybe move to somewhere around 105,000 or 110, however the rest of the council feels in doing that. So again, I'd ask the council how my fellow council members feel about that.
Finley?
Might be easier just to make a motion.
That's what I was going to suggest.
It might be just easier to throw out a motion and
Okay.
no, I'm just suggesting.
No
'cause
problem.
7 of us, we all feel like we have to talk. So.
Well, I guess then I would make the motion to lower that budget item to 105,000, the legal fee. However, I'm not sure what the title is on it.
8293.
Legal fees has $125,000 in it right now.
Then my motion would be to lower that item to 105,000.
Okay, motion made by Pete Albert, seconded. Bill Boyd. Okay, you've spoken to the motion. Do you want to add anything else, Pete?
No.
Anyone else want to? Tom?
I'm opposed to that. I think that dropping 20,000 out of it on a request of 25 is too much. It's steep. I would probably support 10,000. But I think that Eileen has valid reasons for her needs and what we have to do as a town. I think there are potentially other issues where we might find ourselves in legal battles, but, who knows at this point, dealing with the various things that are facing the town. I'd hate to be penny wise and pound foolish and find ourselves unable to fund or having to take money from other departments in order to fund potential legal fees. We've certainly had higher legal fees in the past, various things, and I tend to go with the town manager's request much more heavily than to just knock 80% of what she's requested out of it. I just feel it's too much.
And you know what, in light of what the Councilor Koenig said, I'd amend it to 110,000.
110,000.
Oh, what are we doing? Oh,
Rather than 105. Bill, do you go along
Yeah, I'll
with that?
second that.
Any other discussion? Okay. All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Those are against, say aye. Opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
I'll be a nay to that, coming in late, but
Okay, so it's 4, I believe,
Yeah.
3-0, so it passed. And in the negative was Tom Koenig, Nancy Harrington, and
Jackie.
Jackie. Okay, so it's now 110,000.
What's the number right now currently?
Paul?
The bottom line appropriation
Please.
is $34,511,890.
Did that subtract the 56K?
That subtracted the $56,000. And estimated tax rate is $5.15.
I'm sorry.
$5.15 is the estimated tax rate.
Has to do with warrant. I'm sorry, would you repeat that again? I'm sorry.
Total appropriation, excuse me, is $34,511,890.
Okay.
$34,511,890.
Okay, I'm just making sure we have it for the warrant.
Estimated tax rate is $5.15.
15 cents, okay. Which is an increase of,
25.
25 cents.
25 cents.
thank you.
Nancy?
Yes, Eileen.
Did we take out the 3 cents for the value?
No,
You haven't added that.
no. I haven't increased the value of 3 cents.
I think you can safely increase the value by $20,000, which would reduce the tax rate to an estimate of 3 cents less. So where are we at? 25, so 20,
20 million?
22 cents. Does that take a motion, Eileen?
it doesn't, but I just wanted to say that if we do that, it will come in at what it comes in at. But what I'm saying is that these are things that we know for sure. This
Okay,
is
that's going to.
actually new money rather than inflated money. So I think that we could safely say that it's at least going to be 3 cents less than that. You don't need to make a motion on that,
Right.
but I'm just saying, there are the adjustments to the revenues and expenditures that you've done. If we also use the $20 million amount of money that we know we're going to be getting,
Anyway.
it reduces the tax rate by another 3 cents.
Which would be
So where are we
5.12.
at now? 22 cents?
22 cents.
That'll bring us to
22
22, yeah.
5.12.
$5.12.
Okay. Bill?
I'm confused. 20 million in
We've all
value?
had turn
Oh,
tonight.
I'm
20
so
million in
sorry.
value? I have no idea where you,
Okay, I'm sorry. I talked about it earlier, but maybe I wasn't clear. There, as you know, there are a whole bunch of components to calculating the tax rate, and one of them is the value of the town. So you take your expenses, this is just for the public, I know you know this. You take your expenses, you subtract out your revenue that you receive from other sources, your veterans exemptions, et cetera, overlay, and then you come to an amount to be raised by taxes. So that's basically a net amount of money. Then you take that and you divide that amount of money by the value of the town, and that gives you the tax rate. So as the value goes up, the tax rate goes down.
so so the value of the town's going up by 20 million.
That we know for sure.
For sure.
And what I'm saying is, though, there's a difference between new value, meaning new construction value, rather than inflated value that spreads, that makes your tax rate lower, but your value higher. So your tax bill's the same.
I trust her. Don't thoroughly understand it, but
You don't get it?
I do. Enough.
Not yet.
Okay.
Enough.
Took a minute.
Sort of. Okay.
Okay, Bill?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay. Are there any other changes that we want to propose? Okay, seeing none.
Madam Chair, I would move the 2018, 2019
Well,
proposed
first we
municipal-
have to have a public hearing.
Oh, I thought you already opened it.
No, I did not.
Holy mackerel, you beat me to something.
For once, I was
Shocking.
corrected incorrectly.
Shocking.
I now open the public meeting at 8:48. And as the rush comes up, I will close the public hearing at 8:49. Now, you can make the motion.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I apologize for being hasty. Madam Chair, I would move that the town council move to the deliberative session, proposed municipal 2018-2019 operating budget of $34,511,890.
I believe you want to say warrant, not
And
deliberative
to
session.
the, excuse me, to the warrant.
Okay.
Thank you.
Motion made by Bill Boyd, second by
Second?
Pete Albert. I heard it stereo. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say,
Yep.
oh, Tom.
One real quick question.
Yeah.
The number you gave us before ended in 890, and you subtracted 56,000 from it. Never mind. I'm looking at the wrong column. Thank you.
You all set?
I'm all set.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? None. And Jackie has left, so it is going to be 6-0-0. Okay, there is no collective bargaining agreement. There is no proposed issuance of debt. There is no petition bonds, right? And there's no any petition warrant articles? There is.
There isn't a petition. There isn't a petition warrant article. There is a warrant article that the council asked to be put on the warrant.
Okay, which is the veterans?
Which is the
Which I
veterans
will be
credit.
reading
Yes.
shortly.
Would you like us to explain that? for the
Do we
public?
want to do that now, or we can do it now?
I
Are
would
we
like,
still in the public hearing section of the budget?
No, I've
No, she
already
closed
closed it.
Well, I mean the section.
Oh, I'm
Public
sorry.
hearing. You haven't moved beyond that.
No, I have not.
But we don't need to talk about the veterans thing in the
Until
public
later.
hearing section.
Correct.
Thank you.
When we get down to the town warrant, we do. Okay, which is when I would need to read it, right? Hello.
I thought it was supposed to be part of the public hearing, but I'm not sure.
Because the public didn't request it.
It's our.
But if we're putting it on the warrant, does it, that wouldn't have to be?
Our warrant was not petitioned. We decided it at a council meeting.
It doesn't matter to me, it just,
What the meeting, the minutes read that the council moved the veterans' credit to the town warrant directly.
all right.
the only reason why we prepared something for you is because for the new counselors, if you weren't here at the time, and wanted to kind of go over what the changes were. I know that you were given things, but this actually includes the RSAs and all that kind of thing. And you can read them at your leisure if you like, or we can present them to you.
Okay. All right, so, next, there is no town manager report because it's not a regular meeting. Okay, new business, review of 2018-19 default budget. Town council will review the 2018-19 default budget. Does our audience have to stay here?
Unless you're going to sneak something by.
Unless you're going to change the budget at the very end.
We're not changing the budget, so say thank you. Good night.
Thanks for being here. I was wondering,
We declare a roll.
Good night.
Yeah, later.
Okay, so
So now we can
Mr.
really do business.
Mr. McCallie, you're going to present the default budget?
Yeah, just warm up.
Good night, everybody. Okay, go right ahead, Paul.
Somebody's got to drive the train.
Okay.
Jeez.
The calculations for the default budget, actually prepared by Paul, but presented by me. So the way that the default budget gets calculated is that we take the prior year's voted budget, which is $34,839,898. That's what was voted for by the public. Then we add in the other warrant article that passed, which was one union contract of $58,975, and that's that 1 year. So the total amount is $34,898,873. So then we bring the $34,898,873 up to the top, and we add in contractual things. So things that you have committed to already, or the public has committed to. So this is year 3 of the contract.
Correct.
Year 3 of the contract is of NEPBA is $16,282, and that was actually on the warrant. When we went through the explanation, we said this is the amount for year 3. And the same goes for all those other unions. As we said, there's 5 that have their final year. The NEPBA increase is $120,794. The health insurance increase, and this is only for the unions. So we can't add the health insurance increases for anyone else because these are only the only you can change anybody's health insurance if they're not in a union. So not suggesting it, but I'm just saying that from a default budget standpoint, it has to come out. That's the only thing that can come out. Short-term disability, again, those are the changes in short-term disability for the union contracts that have been passed. Workers' comp, same thing. You saw it before that the increase in workers' comp was $44,000. $21,000 of it involved those 6 contracts. So elections must be. We must have the elections. So that's another thing that gets added back in. And then we take out last year's capital reserve fund expenditures, and then we add in the new. We take out the old debt service and we put in the new debt service, and basically that is primarily the wastewater fund. Because as you know, the town currently has no debt except for what is coming up with the public works facilities. So, or except for 2 small bonds, but so there, you know, if you add and subtract those 2 numbers, it shows you what the net increase is. It's about $14,000, I think it is. So.
So I don't mean to quibble over small numbers,
that's
but
fine.
you said that the $44,000 workers' comp increase, only $21,000 of that is related to the union employees. So $23,000 of workers' comp is related to non-union employees?
No, when we do the calculations for the 16, the 23, the 86, the 48, and the $69,000, we had a workers' comp number. That $21,000 is on top of the number that's already in there for the employees. So it was like $37,000 was related to the union. But since it's already been voted on, it was, if you look at the first one, NEBBA 12, Article 4, that 16,282 included a piece of workers' comp. The additional increase on top of what we had in the budget is the 21,000. So it's it's a rate increase of 21, but is also already, we factored in part of the increase in workers' comp in the default, in this article when we presented it.
I think what you're saying is that it seems strange that all of the, that we could actually subtract, that of the $44,000 increase, only $21,000 of it has to do with 5 unions,
Right.
is what he's asking.
Right.
And the rest
But
belongs to
it's
non-union.
But it's also above already. It's already added into the numbers above, is what I'm saying.
But we didn't predict 3 years ago that there was going to be an increase in workers' comp and build that into that number on the budget.
You really can't, because you'd never know what it was going to be.
I
nor-
understand you can't. That's why
Nor
I don't
can
believe
you-
it's in there. I'm having a hard time with that.
Because we're guaranteeing them a 3% raise.
Yeah.
So I knew 3 years ago, their rate was for-
ABC, yeah.
ABC.
But you didn't know the
So
workers'
I
comp.
knew it was ABC 3 years ago. Last year, we didn't get a rate increase, hardly got a rate increase for workers' comp. This year, we got a huge rate increase for workers' comp. That's on, when I gave you the 44,000, I included it in as part of the raise number, the personal salary number. This is taking it into account. This is separate of 20. I understand what you're saying. You're saying it doesn't look right. This is 21,000 that's additional there, but there's money already accounted for in above, in the 16,000, in the 23,000, in the $86,000 for the workers' comp.
That you would have been able to project for the 3 years.
Correct.
So the 21,000 is the difference that you were not able to project.
Correct.
Does that help at all?
Well,
it
I guess
actually-
it still bothers me that we had a $44,000 number thrown out there as an increase, when here you're implying that it's only a $21,000 increase on what we expected in the budget.
No, it's, I understand that it's very confusing.
Okay, thanks.
When you do a warrant article, obviously people vote on the first year, but in the package, it shows what each year is going to look like.
At that day's dollars.
Right, but when it happens, we say this in raises, this in health insurance based on what we agreed to based on the rates at that time. Then we do workers' comp at whatever the rates were at that time. And then we do whatever other things that are associated with the health, dental insurance and that kind of thing. And then we come up with a number. And so, like, for instance, if you look at the first one, 16,282, it includes workers' comp on that raise back in
What
3
was
years
previously
ago when
calculated.
we had done it. Since then, we have agreed to these raises, and these are the new workers' comp rates that we are being forced to pay. So it relates to contracts that have been agreed to.
Okay.
Do
Does that
you,
answer your question?
It certainly answers it sufficiently for tonight's meeting.
okay.
Okay. So, good. You,
I guess I continue to be frustrated by the concept that health insurance for non-union employees can be just thrown out the window, though. I understand what you're saying, that it's not.
I totally agree with you.
I mean, I just don't think we can ethically throw out their health insurance if this budget goes down. But that's the implication that this is making, and I can't believe the legislature intended that,
I
although
think
it's possible that they did.
I believe that it is, because what it is you have to put in what is actually committed to, that you could not change if you wanted to. So that's what the difference is ethically it wouldn't be a good thing, but it's not like you can't. These other things you actually can't change. So that's what, and I agree, I totally agree with you, that I don't think that that's fair.
I think we'd lose in court if we took away somebody's health insurance because they thought they had an employment contract that required that health insurance was a part of. And if we came back and said, well, the budget failed, you get no health insurance this year,
I'm not saying no.
I bet we'd be sued.
I'm not
So-
saying no, but I'm
No,
saying.
you and I are in agreement.
Yeah.
I'm frustrated with the process, if in fact that's what the legislature was considering when they made this default budget law. And it really should be changed, because
agree.
those
I
are,
totally
those are
agree.
implied contracts, if not legal
Actual.
contracts.
I agree.
And from an ethics perspective, which we would all like to be ethical, I think, there's no way we would do that. We'd quit paving roads before we'd take away
Yeah.
people's health insurance.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Finley, you had a question?
So things like gasoline for vehicles, if gasoline prices doubled and we had in our budget, we would still go back to the default, is that correct?
Yes, because it's not a contract.
Right.
If you had a contract, it really only relates to very specific things related to union contracts that have been passed by the people with elections that must be done.
Like bonds and all.
And it
Yeah.
doesn't contemplate that people have ethics or anything like that. It just says, this is how you do a default budget. This is what you are required by law, by contract, literal contract, signed contract to pay. And then there's the topic of the elections, and there is where you're at. We'd like to take more out, but
Pete?
Okay, so, and again, this is my first budget, and this is somewhat of a lesson. So if we, can we, in the default budget, put back in maybe I lost the conversation with Tom was saying, Councilor Koenig was saying, but can we put back in the health insurance and those things that we had the concern with, that you raised your concern with, can we put that back in the default budget? Okay, no, okay.
no, we
No,
would
because
like
the
to.
state tells us
We
what
would very much
The
like
state
to.
tells us what we can
We
do.
really would.
Now, is there,
Go ahead.
I'm sorry,
Go
is there, no, I'll withdraw that, thank you.
Part of the difficulty is we're told what a default budget, what can be included.
Unless it's in an RSA, or it's been in front of the people on a multi-year contract that they approved already. Those
Which
are
is what you're
basically
saying,
the
the
only
health
things
insurance
that you
is
can
part of
add
that. I
into
agree.
the default budget. And since non-union is a year-to-year, kind of contract, that's why technically you can't. And I agree with you, I've had those conversations.
We fought over that today.
We
I'm
have.
sure.
Yeah, I've
I'm sure,
actually
and
fought
we bring it
with
up every year.
I fought with DRA over that, and it's.
Actually, this is the first time I've heard that out loud and have not noticed it on my own in the past, that we could do that. It fits and it makes sense, but I agree with you, so people don't have to panic, in my opinion.
Right, I would agree.
Yeah, and I think to talk to what Peter was starting to say, once the default budget gets put in place, it comes back to us to decide how it's spent. And I think at that point, we could choose to spend money on health insurance and take it out of something else. So we'd still be stuck with the bottom line to work with.
Thank you. I guess then, how is it that I see other default budgets that are higher than regular operating?
That's a
budget?
wonderful question.
Because
Yeah,
that, I'm always astounded by that.
Different people take more liberties than they should, perhaps, maybe.
I think so, because the reason I asked about the fuel, I believed it couldn't change. It couldn't be, an increase in our fuel costs could not be entered into a default budget. I believe that, but I thought the school district did, in fact, do that.
The school district runs underneath a separate set of RSAs for some heating and other things that we do not run under.
Like they say, which is obviously true, that the buildings have to be at 72 degrees XYZ degrees per year, and
Because of the kids?
Yeah.
For the kids.
for the kids.
Right, and those are some of the issues. The default
Okay.
budget is supposed to be this is what you spent last year, this is what you would spend this year in this year's dollars versus last year's dollars, and you gotta take out some of this stuff. That's in the perfect world when they did the default up in Concord. There's been several tries at reshaping the default budget, and
Well,
it doesn't work.
And I think the reason, if I may, that the default budget sometimes is greater than the budget that's being presented is in fact because they're tight budgets generally. They're not big increases from year over year, and it's the contracts that push them up in excess of what the previous one was. That's why I see it. If you had a big increase in your budget, then the default would mean something at that point.
I think that there are communities who are look at these things very liberally and not necessarily completely
By the book.
Careful.
by the book in other communities.
So the state doesn't have to
The
approve your
state
default.
never, nope, they do not.
So that's why other entities can interpret differently.
Right.
What happened? Never mind. I'm gonna leave it. I'm gonna leave it.
Yeah.
We can talk offline on that question.
I'll leave it. Okay, any other questions about the default?
Well, you haven't gone through the rest of it. Sorry, we
Oh,
stopped you at
sorry,
health
go ahead.
insurance and.
Okay, so
Thank you.
that is the default budget.
Right.
Okay, so this is some more explanation for you.
What?
Okay?
You
No, but
never
this-
got around to talking about removing the capital reserve fund purchases and all
Oh.
that kind of stuff. So the fact that our default budget is $3+ million below our actual budget
Right.
is the concern that we have, because somebody could look at that and say, oh, we'll save ourselves $3 million. And
But see, part of the.
it does a lot of damage, not necessarily any good.
It
Part of the
does-
difficulty too is when the budget's first spoken about, I think I always wanted to be able to make sure that the audience understands that there's so many millions of dollars that we're purchasing that we already have the money for. And that doesn't affect tax rate, but we have to reflect it in the budget. So if we had, like last year, we had all those bridges that we talked about. If you're talking about, let's say it's $3 million worth of purchases, which I don't
Rather
think it
than
is.
$3 million worth of removing money from the savings account
That's
that
what
you
capital
saved
reserve.
for. Yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
Mhm.
So if you say to them, okay, there's $3 million that we're reflecting here, but we've already saved the money. We don't have to raise additional money in the tax rate. That tells them that really, we're only asking for 31 million. So that's part of what I try to do when I talk about the budget. I try to emphasize how much we're taking out of our savings, but we have to reflect it in the total budget amount. I try to make that, because that really does make a difference, that a lot of people don't understand.
They changed it 5 years
Okay.
ago, 7 years ago.
Go ahead.
The council did? Okay. So you, in reality, you do not need to include your capital reserve fund purchases in the budget because you
Right.
are agents to expend the budget, the capital reserve fund. So you don't need to include them in the budget. But you the policy of the town has been
To
for
reflect it.
full disclosure to add them to the budget.
And that's why we need to make it evident that you're,
So what I guess what I'm saying is that even if the default budget, which we'll get to in a minute, the explanation of the default budget, even if the default budget passed, you still have the ability to spend the 1.49 million that you see on I'm sorry, I'm looking at the wrong one. Okay.
'Because
I
it's
see the
capital
default
reserve?
budget. I want to see the default budget, not the explanation. I want to see the default budget. Okay, so so the one-time expenses come out, but you and we end up being at a disadvantage because we spent more out of the capital reserve funds last year, which didn't affect the tax rate,
Right.
and now we're spending less out of the capital reserve funds that do also not affect the tax rate.
Correct.
So,
But it affects the overall.
it affects and it's the
The visual.
gross, it's the gross budgeting policy of the
Correct.
council that
You reflect it.
you reflect it. If you choose not to do it, you don't have to do it.
Right.
I think,
So if we could just, I think this might answer some of your questions.
Well, it's actually providing me with more questions, and, well, and I really, and I think that maybe Counselor Harrington or Rothaus or Koenig, who've been the senior counselors, or Counselor Boyd, could answer this for me is, and I'm all about transparency, but if I'm concerned that, like you are, is that there's going to be a misconception. And everyone's going to say, oh, look at that, there's $3 million.
It went up $3 million.
And so, in that case, are we better off, you know, I guess, what was the logic prior to me being on here to do
I
that?
think it was my time off.
what it was is,
think
what
it
happened
was.
is every time, if we wanted to withdraw from a capital reserve fund, we'd have a public hearing. And the reality is, our logic in showing it on our budget is that everybody, much more people pay attention to this time of year than in the middle of September pulling money out of a capital reserve fund. Have the public hearing, nobody shows up, although nobody showed up tonight, so maybe that defeats the whole thing. But it was because it made it very evident, we don't have to have public hearings during the year now.
Multiple. You'd have to have
to withdraw
multiple
from
ones
capital
every
reserve
time you
fund.
wanted to withdraw.
By law, you do not.
Right.
By law, you only need to have a public hearing to put money into or to establish new capital reserve funds. And the public hearing that you have putting the money into the capital reserve fund is when you do the budget. So when you have that we just had that public hearing.
That covered all that.
It covered what money you were putting in, and that's what the law is. When you take it out, there is no requirement by law for you to have a public hearing.
Has that always been?
It always has been, yeah.
Okay. That's the reason it was given to us back in the day.
That's the law, though.
Yeah.
I'm not telling what the policy
Sure.
is of the council.
That was before my time with that. Also, what happened around that same time is we were trying to be more transparent, but there was that one-time budgeting error that occurred. And after that, it was like, we're going to put all our capital reserve withdrawals in our budget, use the gross appropriation as our budget, and that's for more transparency, that this is the total budget of the town. It isn't $31 million plus another 1.5 million, so it's like $35 million. And that was the feeling, I believe Council Koenig was on
Do you remember?
the Board of Selectmen at the time, that we
Yeah,
changed
I
that.
mean, that was certainly part of it, as I recall. There's a couple of things, but transparency is ultimately the goal we were looking for, making sure that people understood where things were going and didn't have the impression or the feeling that council was sliding money around. When we went to a council from a Board of Selectmen, we also changed the council to be the fiduciary agent.
Right.
And so they had the authorization to expend these funds, where they didn't necessarily, as a Board of Selectmen, have that authorization. And then with the budgeting issue that happened with the bridge fund and things like that, it just became inherently obvious that we would garner more public support in transparency than we would in trying to just explain to them that we're the ruling authority and therefore this is the way it's going to be. And at this point, I think changing it, although there wasn't anybody at this meeting, there have been a lot of people that have indicated they watch these meetings. So I don't think we're out of the public eye at this point. And so I'd be concerned at changing it. And just one more point I want to make is that we've had these same concerns budget after budget after budget. And we do go through the trouble to explain it as clearly and carefully as we can, and we are transparent. And I think that's why our budget passed last year and why it passed the year before that, even though we were kind of shaken over whether or not we were going to get stuck with a default because there was a big number difference. Hopefully, we've garnered enough trust in the public that they believe us when we say this is the right thing to be doing. And that's the message we keep trying to bring out there. And I think we'll do that again this year, and we'll survive that. But it always makes us a little nervous and a little bit panicky over, what if they decide they want to, vote in a $3 million reduction in the budget, which doesn't, we'll get into what the tax rate implications would be for a default tax rate and things like that. But I think that transparency is important to a lot of people that are paying attention.
And
Go ahead.
And thank you for the explanation, being one of the new guys. I appreciate that, and I agree with transparency. I wasn't suggesting otherwise.
No,
I just
I understand.
kind of trying to figure it out for myself here. Thanks.
Eileen?
I would also like to say that in the past, 3 or 4 years, we've had ups and downs in our capital reserve funds because of these bridge projects with state aid coming in, and that has to be grossed up, and then it has to be expended. So, and we're only looking at what's hard about it is you're only looking at the expenditure side, and you're not looking at the fact that you're getting revenue already for it. So it hasn't been really a problem because it's in past years when we haven't been doing these enormous projects, it's a similar amount generally that we do every year in reducing, in removing money from capital reserve. So there isn't this wide disparity that occurs. So it's not in years like this. It's difficult to try and explain, but in most years it isn't.
Well, with the addition of the two police officers, that's been obvious. And that'll be part of the discussion, too, that people have strong feelings for or against. And they'll know that that's a certain percentage of that increase as well. So all you can do is try to explain and help them understand what the difference is.
So what this is, and this might clarify some of the questions relating to the council being the agents to expend the capital reserve funds. So we take the default appropriation, which came from the other page. Can you go back? 31,693,07. You can see that. We bring it to the next page. And then we subtract. This isn't a legal document. This is an explanation. So the first one is actually a document that must go to the public. This is us explaining it to you. The estimated default revenues, which don't come into the default budget, the actual document of the default budget, are $16,375,571. Then you subtract out the veterans credits. You subtract out the overlay, then veterans credits, and you come to the property tax levy, or what I always call the amount to be raised by taxes. So, that's really a good explanation for, especially for the new counselors, that we don't go to the people for $31,690,000. We subtract out $16 million in revenues that we receive from other sources, which also includes capital reserve funds, and includes, that big, huge $5.3 million in that we get from motor vehicles and that kind of thing. So you come to an amount to be raised by taxes or the property tax levy of $16,345,236. So then you take your valuation for property tax, for the property tax rate. You move the decimal point over 3 points because it's the tax rate per thousand. okay? So you take, it. I know it sounds complicated, but it works, okay? So if you take $16,345,236 and divide it by 3 million, instead of 3 billion, 3,382,236, you'll come to the default tax rate budget, the default amount. Is somebody doing those calculations?
Which is 483, but the new proposed tax rate is 512, correct?
Yes.
So it really would be at 29, right, I
Right.
understand.
Yeah.
So it's
exactly.
29 cents, not 33.
So it's, there's no magic bullet for calculating the tax rate. There's no huge mystery. It's just the amount to be raised by taxes, which is the net amount to be raised by taxes after all other revenue comes in. And then you divide it by the value of the whole town. And then you move it back 3 decimal points because it's the value per thousand. Okay?
Did you have a question? No.
Is that?
Yeah,
I know Tom gets it because we did the budget 101. I know yeah. So anyway, so that's the way that you calculate the tax rate, and that's why when you look at the value, you can tell what your what a penny costs. So you can say, all right, a penny is $33,823. That's a penny. You want to know what 10 cents is? It's 338,223. So it's just a matter of moving decimal points
Decimals.
over from the valuation. That's how you
Yeah.
calculate what a dollar on the tax. So a dollar on the tax rate is 3,382,000. Yeah.
That's a dollar.
So it seems like magic, but it's really very simple to figure out what a increase on the tax rate would be. So the default property tax rate would be did you take the 3 cents out?
No, this was.
But it
done
doesn't,
before.
but it doesn't affect either one. Both of them would have 3
Right,
cents
3
taken
cents
out.
taken, right.
So the difference is 33 cents in the, between the default budget and this one. So when we look at revenues, it won't, I'll let you explain this part.
So, in the budget that we discussed tonight, in the revenues included your capital reserve expenditures of $1.4 million and $298,000. So, to get an apples to apples comparison on revenues coming in, because you're not going to get $18 million worth of revenues if we go to default, because the capital reserve funds are going to be pulled away. Maybe some of them will, but we don't know that. So I pull all of them away to keep an apples and apples comparisons. And that's how you come up with your $16,375,571 as a revenue number for the default, right, at this time. And that's in the, up top, the second line, it says estimated default revenue, see below. That's how we came up with that $16 million number. It's just a verification. And then the next section is an appropriation comparison, where I was using $34,567,000 at the time. We take out the capital reserve funds, we would be at $32,815,579. Default was $31,169,307. The difference is $1,125,000.
I get it now. So, so basically what he is saying is, if you go back to the previous slide, do a calculation for me on what the difference is between the total budget for 17-18 and the one for 18-19.
And the new budget is 34,511,890. Is that correct, Paul?
Just let's, yes, but I'm just trying to talk
Yeah.
about process right now. Okay, I can't read that.
3,208,566.
Okay. Write that down, please. So the difference between the voted budget, the difference in the default budget and what was appropriated is, I just told you to subtract those two things.
Yeah, 3,208,566.
Okay. So let's go to the next page. So this should come out right if I'm trying to explain it here. So if you subtract out the sorry, if you subtract out the amount of the capital reserve fund expenditures for this year, you come to, okay, do you come to that 1125272? Okay. So, the point is that when you have and the reason why it doesn't come out is because of those contracts, so I apologize for making it more confusing. But basically what is being said is that we look at the default budget, we look at, you can actually spend, if you choose to, that capital reserve fund as agents to expend. You can actually spend that money for the capital reserve funds, and so you wouldn't be short $3 million. You would be short $1,125,000.
So we're just saying, even though if the default budget passed, we could still spend the capital reserve purchases.
Right.
Right.
So, and what we wanted to get to you is that if the default budget passes, you choose to spend the capital reserve funds anyway. The cuts that you'd have to make are $1,125,000.
Okay. Okay. Questions or? Okay, if there are any, we can move this to the warrant.
This doesn't go to the warrant. Well, the default budget does, I'm sorry.
That was a test, wasn't it?
I've always seen it on there.
I thought that you were talking about this page.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so I will accept a motion to move the default budget to the warrant.
So moved.
Second by,
Second.
motion made by Bill Boyd, second by Tom Thornton. Any other discussion? Yes, Paul?
Nancy, just for the record, the default budget is $31,690,307.
And should that be in the motion? Would you
That's fine, Madam Chair.
motion, Tom? Do you
Second.
agree to that?
Mhm.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? None. 600. Okay, town warrant. This is, you have to bear with me. I suppose I'm supposed to read this. Oh, no.
No.
Not yet. I have to read the warrant.
You mean you have to read it out loud into the record?
That is correct.
Because you can read it anytime.
Wise guy. Okay, to the state of New Hampshire, to the inhabitants of the town of Merrimack and the county of Hillsborough in said state qualified to vote in town affairs. You are hereby notified that the first session deliberative of the annual meeting of the town of Merrimack will be held at the Mastrocola Upper Elementary School All-Purpose Room on Babusick Lake Road in said Merrimack on Wednesday, March 14th, 2018, Snow date of Thursday, March 15th, at 7 o'clock in the evening for explanation, discussion, and debate of each warrant article. Warrant articles may be amended at this session per RSA 40:13, Roman numeral 4. You are hereby notified that the second session, the ballot voting of the annual meeting of the Town of Merrimack, will be held on Tuesday, April 19th, 2018, at 7 o'clock in the forenoon. I said 19th? Sorry, it says 10th. Sorry, I misspoke, April 10th. In the forenoon a.m. for the choice of town officers elected by official ballot, to vote on questions required by law to be inserted on the official ballot, and to vote on all warrant articles from the first session on official ballot per RSA 40:13, Roman numeral 7. The polling places for the election of town officers and other actions required to be inserted on the ballot will open on said date at 7 o'clock in the forenoon a.m. and will not close earlier than 7 o'clock in the evening p.m. The three aforementioned polling places will be as follows: James Mastrocola Upper Elementary School, All-Purpose Room, 26 Babusick Lake Road; St. John Newman Church, 708 Milford Road, Route 101A; and Merrimack Middle School, 31 Madeline Bennett Lane. Article 1 is to choose all necessary town offices for the ensuing year. Article 2, and this is where I want to make sure I have the correct number before I read it. Is it $34,511,890?
That's what I have.
Okay. And the default would remain the same as listed, right?
Correct.
Article 2, shall the town vote to raise and appropriate an operating budget, not including appropriations by special warrant articles, and other appropriations voted separately, the amount set forth on the budget posted with the warrant, or as amended by vote of the first session, for the purpose set forth, therefore totaling $34,511,890. Should this article be defeated, the default budget shall be $31,690,307, which is the same as last year, with certain adjustments required by previous action of the town or by law, or the town council may hold one special meeting in accordance with RSA 40:13, Roman numeral 10 and Roman numeral 16, to take up the issue of a revised operating budget only. Now, we do have to vote on this because it goes into whether it's recommended or not. So we need to vote and whether we recommend this article or not. All those in favor of recommending say aye. Aye. Any opposed? None. So it will be listed as 600.
You'll have one more chance to change that vote.
At the deliberative. Okay, Article 3, shall the town vote to adopt an all veterans property tax credit in accordance with RSA 72:28-B in the amount of $500. If adopted, the credit will be available to any resident or the spouse or surviving member of any resident who once served not less than 90 days on active duty in the armed forces of the United States and was honorably discharged, or was an officer honorably separated from service, and 2, is not eligible for and not receiving a credit for veterans who served in a qualifying war or armed conflict, or for veterans with a service-connected disability. If adopted, the credit will be in the amount of $500, which is the same amount as the credit for a veteran who served in a qualifying war or armed conflict. If this all veterans tax credit is adopted, any person desiring to receive the credit shall file an application with the assessor's office by April 15th of the applicable tax year. If adopted, this amendment shall become effective as of April 1st, 2018. Now, all we need to do, we don't need to list, we just need to know if it's majority or not. So those,
Can we discuss this first?
oh, I'm sorry,
We
yes.
haven't moved this one to the warrant, and I think there's some wording in here that should be considered.
Go
If
for
I
it.
might.
Go for it, yep.
You read it slightly differently than the printed copy that's in front of me.
Oh,
And so I'm just concerned with whether we're
Well,
using your
perhaps it
words
was my-
or the printed words.
where are you talking?
Well, you said any surviving member of any resident, the third line, first couple of words,
I'm sorry,
as
it is
opposed to
say
any surviving
spouse
spouse.
of any resident. So
At the
I
end of that
misspoke
line, you
then.
said on active duty instead of active service in the armed forces.
Active service, thank you, that is correct.
And then at the second to last or third to last line, it says, with the assessors by April 15th, you added the word office. I'm not sure you intended to change it, and I don't care if office is in there personally, but
So file an application with the assessors by April 15th, that is correct.
that's what it says.
Yeah,
But, assessor's office made more sense to
I
me.
got carried away, apparently.
But I
That's
had other
fine.
questions. In
Go
the
ahead.
first line, it says adopt an all veterans property tax credit in accordance with RSA. It's not quoted, it's not, so to speak, it's not anything, but in the third from the bottom, it says, if this all veterans tax credit, it's not all veterans property tax credit. And again, it's hard to read. You stumbled over it as you read it because
It didn't sound
doesn't-
right, it doesn't fit.
It should be a title or a description of something and.
If
and
this
it
all
doesn't
veterans
match.
property tax credit,
Paul's probably going to tell me that legally we can't do anything else.
was this written by an attorney?
It was,
I think we should,
but it's called all veterans tax credit. That's what the RSA is. 72 colon.
shouldn't it say that at the top
28B.
as well?
We could
Yeah, it
change that,
should.
yes.
Just
the
take
word
out property out?
We could
so that
take
it's
out property.
consistent?
Yes, but
And I just wonder if there's some way we can put it in quotes because that's what it's called, or we can underline it, or do something so that it's easier to read.
we can do that.
We slap a question mark on the end of the sentence?
You have to have a question mark, I think, but
Could we, veterans tax credit, could we capitalize those three words and put it in quotation? Would that help with that?
that is the title. Yeah, that would be fine with me.
Capitalize veterans
Veterans tax credit.
credit and then put that into quotations. And that would also be true, third line from the bottom, quote, veterans capitalized tax credit.
Is the word all part of that title as well? So you have to.
It is.
Yes, it
include that
is.
as well.
All right then.
Jeez.
Thank you.
That's what my problem was. I
And
couldn't
then-
see.
One other comment, again, the fourth from the bottom, technically, it says served in a qualifying war, were armed conflict.
Where?
And
It's
I'm
gotta be.
Thinking it should be where or.
That's why I
something to
stumbled over
effect.
that. It
Yeah,
didn't
you stumbled
sound
over
right.
that one too, and
Where?
which would be where there was armed conflict or
Right.
I don't know what the previous laws
Well,
technically
hold
said.
on, look at-
Oh, with armed conflict.
No,
Or with armed conflict would
That's
make more
probably
sense
what it
than were,
was.
but-
Qualifying form.
Right in front
It
of
is,
you.
yeah, that's what I'm reading. It's
I
or.
think it's or.
It's or.
Just read it, yeah.
It is
Or.
Qualifying war or
Any
armed
other
conflict?
war or armed conflict.
Oh,
Okay,
okay.
perfect.
Thank you.
That did, as I was reading it, it just didn't sound right.
Yeah, no, it,
I just
So
what?
Or were in,
It reads,
or armed
And a
conflict.
qualifying or armed
any other
conflict.
war or armed conflict. That's the language directly taken.
Qualifying war, right?
Yes.
okay, or, yeah.
Or armed
Yeah.
conflict, yeah.
Service in a qualifying war or armed conflict.
Okay. That works for me, thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Any other questions? Sir? Okay, so we just have to vote to see if to move it, but yes.
I won't be voting this, but I'm not going to abstain. I'm not voting. So if I have to move, I'll do that, but if I can stay
You
right here.
recuse yourself.
Yeah,
Oh, because you're.
Right.
Yeah, okay. I just won't count you.
thank you.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None? 5. Well, it's majority. We don't have to put the number down.
That's.
That's for the
majority
town
vote
vote.
required is for the town, the townspeople to know of majority
Okay,
vote.
can we put in our recommendations? Does it matter?
No, you cannot put in your recommendation on this because it's an exemption
Well, then.
and not
the
a
hell with it.
budget
Any
item.
article,
So
it
that,
involves
that's.
money.
But
But we
the
don't say
vote
how
is
much.
500 The vote is 500 to move this to deliberative session.
Okay,
Eileen,
now
Move it to
that's,
the warrant,
well,
which
no.
goes to the deliberative session.
We have to do this whole thing to the deliberative session. Right.
Eileen suggested that I should say that the reason I'm not voting on the issue, I've recused myself because I would be taking benefit of.
Benefit.
Yeah. Thank you.
Well, you volunteered not to use it, right?
You just have to not go to
no.
the assessor and not ask for it.
Trust me, I'll be first in line.
Well, they only have 5 days.
That's right.
Yeah, quick.
Okay, so,
You-
we need a motion to move the town warrant to deliberative session on March 14th, 2018.
So moved.
Moved by Bill Boyd,
Second.
second by Peter Albert. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None. 600. And I'm going to pass signatures, things around for the warrant. We'll make sure that the numbers are
We're signing blanks.
corrected.
The numbers will be corrected, everything will be
Yeah.
corrected, and I'll print out a good copy. There are some state forms that I'm gonna have Becky text you when they're ready to be coming and signed that go along with this. Since we changed some of the numbers around tonight, I don't have those state forms. I have to get those approved by the state. And then once they're approved, you'll have them for signature. That should be probably early next week sometime.
Okay, any comments from the press? None. Comment from the public? Excuse me, none. Comments from the council? Anything? None. Yes, Peter.
First of all, I want to say thanks to Paul and Eileen and Kyle for the PowerPoint presentation on the cooling and heating system. Because to me, I think it's very important that when we're talking, there's a lot of people that might be watching and have an idea and can see these things that are being discussed. And so, that being said, thank you. And in future, when we have items like this, we should continue to use a PowerPoint to keep everybody educated and informed. I guess there's going to be part of this is a Monday morning quarterbacking comment is when we have an item, a significant item like this, the 241,000 or whatever we're talking about is, maybe we should catch it earlier in the year if we have something coming up over the next year and begin this discussion earlier. And so we can, when we hit budget season, we kind of know where we're going to stand on it. So just a thought out there, but again, thank you.
Any others?
Just thank the staff as well for being laboring through all that. It pity the poor folks, but I appreciate all they put together for us.
Ditto.
Okay, motion, John?
And I would thank the staff specifically, but also thank the townspeople for your consideration. It's been a difficult budget year for us. We're adding staff to the police department. We've gone through a lot of discussions over why, the reasoning and the requirements and things. We added staff to the fire department last year. So I ask you to bear with us and understand that we are in fact trying to keep our cost in control and maintain that, but there are in fact times when it's necessary to expand staff or increase the budget somewhat. And so while we see a $1.6 million increase in our general fund this year, a large part of that is due to staffing requirements to serve the town in the way that we all expect to be served and to still maintain the public safety expectations that the town has. So thank you.
Well said, Tom. Any other? Okay, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion by Bill Boyd, second by
Second.
Tom Thornton. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, 600.
I get the iPad.